Hello and welcome to another video. It's Paul here. Today we're going to be looking at the Battle of Isandlwana, which took place on the 22nd of January 1879. Now just a quick overview for the battle. Basically the commissioner for South Africa was a guy called Bartle Frere, and his commander, which was Lord Chelmsford, Frederick Thesiger, decided that they were going to invade the Zulu lands. And they did this without the permission of the Prime Minister at the time, Benjamin Disraeli, and they miscalculated both the size and also the ferocity and the determination of the Zulu warriors. The British had given the Zulu King Cachoeira various demands, which included disbanding his army and basically surrendering to the Crown, and of course he was never going to do that. So the British invaded in three columns, and in the central column they went through Rorke's Drift and ended up in Isandlwana. Now Chelmsford was determined to seek out the Zulus and have an early victory, and unbeknown to him that an army of Zulus, now depending on where and what you read, some accounts say 40,000, some will say 60,000, some will say 20,000. But we can safely say a large force of Zulus managed to get behind the British undetected at Isandlwana, which is where the Zulus waited. Now, the British set up camp at Isandlwana, as a Victorian army would have done. So they had their field kitchen here, where they were preparing food for the men. Now, to start with, I think there was about 3,000 at the camp, and Chelmsford decided to split his force in two, so he left about 1,800 at the camp, and here they are getting their lunch. All the provisions here are for the invasion. You've got the horses here that have been desaddled, if that's the correct term for it, and again, the horses would have been for soldiers. Cattle would have drawn all the wagons in, so you've got the the ox-drawn wagons here. And you've got a small corral there to keep the cattle in. What Chelmsford didn't do, he didn't corral the camp, which meant it would have meant surrounding it with the wagons as a defensive position. So when the Zulus appeared, to the horror of the British, they had to fight in open line formation and face the Zulus in companies like this. So this is the 1st Battalion of the 24th Regiment. And again, I think nearly all of them were wiped out, and here they are facing up the Zulus. And again, there were two 7-pounder guns on the South African carriages here, so we'll just have a look at those and try and zoom in here with this camera. And they were firing at the Zulus, and again, probably not to much effect by this stage. The Zulus had closed the distance rapidly, and the guns probably couldn't bear down on them effectively. And again, the British also had rocket batteries. So here, look over here, I think it's Major Russell, I might have got his rank wrong, but here he is firing the rockets, and again, these were pretty ineffective. I mean, they were designed to scare the Zulus. I don't really think it had the desired effect. And again, it didn't take long for the rocket batteries to be completely overrun, and here you have the Zulus breaking the line. Now again, we've already said Chelmsford's biggest mistake was he underestimated the Zulu. There's a Latin saying which goes along the lines of, if you want peace, prepare for war. And that's what the Zulus did. These guys were farmers who were trained as warrior. Si vis pacem para bellum. And that's what they did. They trained for war all the time, but they also wanted peace all the time. And again, here we are. Now, these Zulus were brave guys. I mean, these were, as the British thought, these were savages with spears. These were a disciplined, well-organised army of regiments, and they had no problem taking on the British. And again, there wasn't a lot of... the people in Britain were outraged when they found out that Thesiger had invaded Zululand. There was outrage, and when he returned to Britain after the battle, I mean, he was ostracised for some time because of what he did. You know, the misconception is that the British were all for wiping out the Zulu. That actually wasn't true. They were horrified, and Queen Victoria didn't see Lord Chelmsford Thesiger for a long time because of his actions. So here we have the Zulus here, and again they're surrounding the bridge here in squares. I mean, this would have been a last formation of defence. Did they undertake defensive squares at Isandlwana? Not too sure about that, but if they did, this is what they would have looked like. And again, you can see from these guys on the ground, there's pretty much no hope for them. They were their rifles, the Martini Henry, or the Henry Martini, whichever way you want to say it, could fire a large caliber round at the Zulu. But again, there are accounts that they ran out of ammunition, and again that's represented here in these boxes. You can see that there's shortage of ammunition. You've got runners here coming up through the camp, bringing up ammunition. And again, if you watch the film Zulu Dawn and read some accounts, there's stories that soldiers had to queue up for ammunition during the battle, and that the containers were screwed together with the ammunition in them, and this caused huge problems. Again, not too sure whether or not that happened. If it certainly did happen, it was definitely a miscalculation again on the British part. But there you have the ammunition wagon. And if we have a zoom out, we can see the lines of Zulus in their thousands here, and they are attacking the British. And again, it must have been absolutely terrifying for the British during this attack. It happened at about lunchtime, and there was an eclipse of the sun, believe it or not, probably about half an hour into the battle, which sent the battlefield into total darkness in the middle of the day. And again, you know, you're a British soldier facing thousands of Zulus, and all of a sudden the sun disappears. Again, if you had no prior knowledge of that, you must have thought that was it. This was Armageddon for you, the end. And again, very few British soldiers survived Isandlwana, and it is to this day the biggest defeat of any British army, in fact any European army, to a native army in history. And again, could it have been avoided? I think had the British lagered their camp and set about defensive positions, and if Chelmsford hadn't been, I wouldn't say arrogant, but he certainly underestimated his foe, could they have saved the day? Again, not too sure about that. You know, anywhere between, as I said, 20 to 40,000 Zulus coming at you. Not convinced. But again, you know, you look at the history, and you know, you have to remember that most of these British soldiers had nothing. They fought for an empire that they didn't benefit from. You know, the British Empire wasn't there for the benefit of 99.99% of the British people. It was there for the benefit of the monarchy and the ruling class, and these guys were the instruments that allowed it to happen. And again, life at home would probably be so unbearable in terms of food, diet, living conditions, that the army was their only options. You know, and I say that they were very brave soldiers. You know, they were brave, and they were fighting for a cause which what they believed in. But again, the Zulus were fighting for their existence and for their homeland, and that can't be underestimated. You know, you've got an indigenous group of people fighting off an invader. That's a very good motivational tool. And again, at the end of the battle, there were stories that the Zulus desecrated British bodies. Again, they did disembowel quite a lot of the soldiers after they were dead. Again, reading some accounts, that was to aid decomposition. Other accounts say it was to release the spirits, but I certainly don't think it was any macabre ritual that they did. I just think that's what the Zulus did. And again, here you've got Melville and Coghill. Now, these were two officers that were given the Queen's colour, and they were told to escape back to Rorke's Drift if they could with the colours. And unfortunately, they got wiped out on Fugitives Trail, and the colours fell into the water, and they were recovered sometime later. But Melville and Coghill got the Victoria Cross for their actions. And again, you know, they died fighting hand to hand, just the two of them, against Zulus that were pursuing them. And you know, to put it into today's terms, if you think of some of the African runners from Kenya and Somalia and Ethiopia, I mean, these athletes today can cover vast distances in extreme heat very, very quickly, and that's what the British were up against. I mean, these Zulu warriors were super fit athletes and, you know, British soldiers fighting in wool tunics, wool trousers, wool shirts. Couldn't have been very, very pleasant for them at all. So that's Isandlwana. Again, if we talk about some of the Lego elements, if we look at some of the wagons, again, these are just my own creations, MOCs. They're just wagons that are pulled by cattle. And again, there's one over here that's still coupled up. And I've got the yoke on the cows there, or the cattle, should I say. And they're just unloading a wagon there. And again, here they are in the kitchen. They've got the tea set out, ready to give the officers their afternoon tea, and they're baking and cutting up meat. And you've got a guy here peeling carrots if they had them. Some fish perhaps from the Buffalo River, making some sort of stew. Some chickens there, and just some bits of fruit and that. Again, these are all Lego elements. And you've got some pigs. Again, I'm not sure about what livestock they had with them. It's quite probable that they did have livestock with them that they took. And again, you've got the water. Again, water would have been a huge problem, so they would have brought it in barrels, and then they would have had a water bowser here. And again, here we have the buckets and the water for the cooking. And again, if we move along, we can see the trees. Again, they're flower elements with the olive 1x1 flower plates. I'll just come around this side out of the lighting. Perhaps you can see them in better detail. Just move the camera up for you there. And again, the foliage, it's just all olive grass and reeds and stuff like that. The Zulu warriors, I think they're pirates of the Caribbean, and that they're the zombies. Again, if I've got that wrong, somebody will tell me in the comments, as they always do. And again, if we come back here, we'll have a full look along the British lines here. So again, here we have the redcoats fighting along here. And again, rumour has it when Chelmsford found out that Isandlwana was under attack, he carried on eating his lunch. Again, is that true? I don't know. There's certainly accounts of it. You know, people say there's no smoke without fire. Other people say never let the truth get in the way of a good rumour. So make up your minds. But at some stage, he should have gone to the relief of Isandlwana. He was only 8 miles away, and he didn't. And again, that was another reason for his diminution. They were not happy with him at all. And you've got Durnford here making his last stand on a wagon. And Durnford was paralysed in one arm. So I've tried to depict him there. But again, he was assegaied to death. Well, let's try and zoom in on him there. But again, he led the Natal native contingent, I think, and they respected him. He was a good man. You know, the British officers would have perhaps viewed their native warriors with perhaps some contempt or distrust, but you know, Durnford trusted them, and they were very loyal to him, and I guess to the crown ultimately. But again, you've just got wave after wave after wave of Zulu regiments here, and again, there is not much hope for the British. Once those Zulus appeared, I would have said within 30 minutes of those Zulus appearing at Isandlwana, the battle was lost. It couldn't be won. So there you have it. So that's Isandlwana. Now, in terms of numbers, I think there's about 2,000 Zulus there, possibly a bit more. I've been brick linking those for the last 4 or 5 years. And in terms of the Redcoat, which is the Royal Guard from, I think it's series 4 or 5 minifigs, I think there's about 250 of those. And again, been collecting those over years. And the pith helmets, again, some of them would have been dyed with tea, I think, and some of them would have been white. So there's a mixture of both there to keep everyone happy. Probably took about 2-3 weeks to build. There's not a huge amount of stuff to complicated stuff, but it certainly took that amount of time to lay out the Zulu warriors. And if you guys want to know more, there's a YouTube channel, I think it's called Redcoat Tours, and there's a chap on there that walks the battlefield, and again, I watched his videos. They're fantastic. So that's Redcoat Tours on YouTube. Have a look at those if you can, and like I say, brilliant walking the trails, and you can actually see the difficulty that the British would have had in trying to fight and escape the Zulu warriors. But there you are. That's pretty much it. Thanks for looking. If you enjoy the video, please think about subscribing. It does help out the channel. And as always, have a nice weekend.